Okay, Pats, Eagles, it's here. Who's covering this madness? Local news and sports crews have been launched. We'll talk to the coach behind the media game plan. Why are you so moody? The signals you give off on social media without saying a single word. Are reporters, radio hosts, and other media types guilty of class prejudice, conflicts of interest, or offensive behavior? And finally, our quick hits, including one country's decision to shut down television. Shut down television.
Oh, that was my cue.
Yes. How many times have you actually gotten that cue, Jimmy?
Today, twice.
This week, new names, same old faces, two media hounds butting heads, making waves, and having fun. Welcome to Behind the Media. I'm Dan Lothian.
And yes, I am Jimmy Young.
And you can use the hashtag Behind the Media to interact with us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and find us on iTunes and the CLNS Media Network. This episode is brought to you by WorkSess. Get to know me. It's engaging content for the workplace. There's nervous excitement as the Pats take on the Eagles in Super Bowl 52. I had to ask you what Super Bowl it was, Jimmy.
Oh, that's pathetic, Dan. That's pathetic.
But again, as it always fits in with our 2080 theory, right?
Right.
For those who've been listening for quite a while. Anyway, Countdown to Madness, the biggest televised event, and local news and sports crews from around the country have been flocking to capture every moment. It's like working in air traffic control, dispatching crews, and then finding the right story angles. One of the people at the controls is Maury Levine, NBC Sports Boston Director of Programming, and for our purposes, he's the head of traffic control. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, guys.
How'd you like
Good
that?
To be here.
Isn't it? I mean, you're basically like traffic control, right? Getting everybody going, make sure everything's flowing, right?
Yeah, it really is a lot of logistical planning, but the page. But it's a grind.
Yeah, but they're going to get very much on
that.
And are you?
We're tech people. All that kind of stuff. And then NBC 10, I believe, has 20-something. So there's over 50 people there, which is crazy. Wow. But from speaking first from like the sports side, you kind of really defer to the guys who have been covering the team the whole year round. So for us, it's Tommy Curran and Mike Giardi. So those guys are going to get, the lead almost every day. But, if there's a cool, news angle or Pats, it just depends on what day it is really. Like today, I'm sure there's no media availability, players, so fans are going to be flocking in. So your news guys are going to be more of the lead today, probably. Hey, fans are coming in, blah, blah, blah. Here's the scene in downtown Minneapolis. But yeah, it's pretty standard. If you've been covering the team and you know the guys and you have your sources, then you're gonna get the top angles of the week. So, but there are a ton of angles to go through, and also want to try and hit all different platforms. So we do some things that are specific to the linear side, some things that are specific to the digital side, and social media and stuff like that. So it's a lot different than when Jimmy and I used to cover Super Bowl back in the 90s. That's for sure.
90. Oh, I thought it was back in the 60s.
I was the backup plan. I think I was the backup plan more, if you remember correctly. As you know, I'm not afraid on manage the E.
Because everybody.
Oh no, I'm just naming names. Have to manage. So that has to. I mean, who's got priority on schedule there?
Yeah, I mean that's a tough call. We have a pretty good relationship with them, so on his show on radio. So
you share content, but you still have to manage egos.
Yeah, and you do, and I would say, that person in particular that you're talking about, I mean, you can name him if you want.
It's Michael Felger. I named him. Okay, I'll take full responsibility for it.
Yes. Yeah, send all messages to
Jimmy.
Jimmy.
He's actually very easy to work with. You would think that a personality that big would maybe be harder to work with, but he really is, out of all the people in this since I've been over here that I've worked with, this guy works harder than most. I mean, he's in here when we're doing Pat's pre and post. He's in here, well before the game, during the game. He's like writing down every single play, and he's like totally locked in, not schmoozing, not doing anything. So, if somebody's gonna put in the effort and work hard and want to be the best, then you know what? If they want to have a little edge to them, which he doesn't, but if they do, then as long as you're putting some time behind it, then to me it's justified.
By the way, for people out there who are watching the coverage, oftentimes you'll hear criticism that you're doing too much of the stories around the game itself and not enough about the game, and there are those who are saying you're doing too much X's and O's and not enough of the color. How do you find the right balance of producing content that makes everybody happy, I guess?
Back when we did stuff for NECN, more of the X's and O's, that's what people tend to like, but then again, for our social platforms, like we'll release like hype videos and
Teases.
Gary Hangway and
Teases.
DJ Bean doing this like 2-minute talk show thing that they're doing, and they had like Jenny McCarthy on yesterday, so that's kind of more fluff, and not fluff. I mean, it's still pertinent stuff, but it's not the hardcore.
It's Phil. It's personality Phil. And it's good.
Yeah, right.
And it's entertaining. Yeah, I got you. Hey,
Yeah.
I got one last question for you because I know you have a call to go to in a few minutes. You mentioned the word work. And I heard a couple of guys on the radio this week basically saying, this isn't work. When we were writers, we had deadlines.
You still, what's already been out there, and before all this social media, when the 6 o'clock news rolled around, that was the first time you were hearing of something. So
Right.
you could sort of just roll in at 5 o'clock, catch up on stuff, and go on. But these guys now, I mean, they're starting email chains, 7, 8 in the morning. Here's what's out there now. Here's what I've seen. This is what I've posted. So yeah, it is work.
It's 24/7.
It's different than the Shaughnessy types who have like a hard deadline of stuff, but
Right.
they don't. They're all working.
He's a curmudgeon and a dinosaur anyway. We know that.
We could do a whole show on that. Anyway, we know you have to run. Maury Levine, Director of Programming at NBC Sports Boston. Thanks so much for joining us on Behind the Media.
And Maury, I am
Thanks, guys.
so proud of who you are, what you've become, the career you've had. I really appreciate you joining us.
You can kiss him
today.
on the weekend. You don't have to do that over here.
I got to say that
Something like that.
They've really narrowed this down to the kinds of filters that people are using to doctor their photos or to enhance their photos, and based on that information, you can learn a lot about how someone's feeling.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's interesting. This I'm just going to read from this article. First of all, I think we have to credit analyze words,
Right.
so it kind of looks at what you use on.
I think this is. Some people just enjoy those darker, grayer tones. But it certainly opens my eyes, right? I mean, I think that I will look at my friends and what they post a little differently, maybe more carefully, if I find sort of this pattern, this ongoing pattern of these kinds of things. I mean, it's not that I would immediately pick up the phone and say, I have declared that you are suffering from something based on the colors you're using.
We laugh, and you say that a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but my son's 27 years old, so he grew up in the Facebook generation. And while he was a teenager, a late teen, usually 16, 17, 18, 19, he was using Facebook to show his mood. And he used it as a way to vent. And I was a little concerned as a parent when I read quite a few things that he posted. But as I talked to him about it directly, one-on-one, using a phone, okay?
Yes. I'm glad you know how to use a phone.
He explained that this is a way for him to get his emotions out. And he doesn't really care about what the comments are that follow. And, of course, I had to go into the old, social media is looked at by future employers,
it
and
doesn't
you've
go
got to
away.
be careful what you say and post because it's out there permanently. That is a good way of parenting. But I also commended him for at least being able to get his emotions out there and not internalize them, which I think is where really the trouble can begin.
Right. Wow. Well said, Jimmy.
Thank
as
you.
always,
That's
you
what I
are
do.
the master. By the way, did I tell you
Reverend.
that
I like the Reverend.
Yeah, yeah.
I like that.
By the way, did I tell you we have a new name for the show?
Yes,
It's
I
called
heard.
Behind the Media.
And it's a cool logo. And
It is.
I'm not really that upset that our pictures aren't part of it anymore. I just like the
no
fact that our
ego
names
there.
are.
Yeah, no ego there, Jimmy.
No, there's a lot of ego on me. You know that.
Behind the media, behind the media, behind the media, behind. I wanted to say behind the music because everybody knows that.
No.
You don't want to fall into it, but this is even better than that. It's behind the media.
With Dan Lothian and Jimmy Young.
That's right. If
So
you
we
like,
get our names in there.
and if you like Behind the Media, we encourage you to hashtag Behind the Media to interact with us on Twitter. Also, subscribe to us on iTunes. Keep listening to us on the CLNS Media Network. So it's halftime.
How'd I do?
Oh,
I'm learning.
very nice, Jimmy.
Even an old dog can learn new tricks, yes.
This show brought to you by WorkZest. Get to know me. We're creating engaging content for the workplace. And of course, Jimmy, the appeal always is we're looking for more folks out there who might be interested in having us shill a little bit for their companies. Come on our show. Be
I'm
part
a
of our
professional
show.
shill, by the way, so
Yes,
I'm
you are.
available for hire.
That's-
I'm not afraid to say that.
A shiller. What tool do you use as shilling? Is that something that you scrape? Is that it? Almost shilling feels like it's a
No, he's a
scraping
former
kind of-
pitcher for the Red Sox
Oh,
and the
that's
Phillies
right.
and the Arizona Diamondbacks,
That's
and I
right.
suppose he should be in the Hall of Fame.
He
but
should.
I
So-
don't like his political views either. Ha! What a shock.
By the way, do you think his socks ever got cleaned up?
They're in
That's
that
pretty good.
sock.
Huh?
That is very
Are
good.
you
Dan.
surprised that I knew that?
Where does that sock live, Dan?
It lives in a drawer somewhere
No,
where the other one isn't.
Class, where does it live?
It lives
Baseball's
in
Hall of Fame.
Yes. And for those who don't know,
In Cooperstown, New York.
those who aren't a sports fan, it's the famous bleeding of the
Bloody sock.
Yeah, exactly. And
Game
it's
6.
It's interesting that he did put ketchup in there to make that happen. So,
no,
yes.
he did not.
So
But
it-
you know what was sad?
What
that
was
was a
sad?
story.
That was a story. That it
was
fake.
pathetic.
But it was fake
It
news.
was
even
fake
before
news.
we were talking about it.
Misinformation.
That's
Sorry.
right. But if you're interested in be partnering with us on this show for us to talk about the great things you're doing with your company and to highlight your company along with some others here on our show, Behind the Media, you can reach out to us at info@littleparkmedia.com. That's info@littleparkmedia.com. Oh, Jimmy.
I got it.
Jimmy, you
got
got
the-
it. You're
we
proud
got-
of yourself, aren't
Yes,
you?
I am.
It's
No one else might be, but I am. Yes.
Okay, it's our third quarter. Our reporters, radio hosts, and other media types guilty of class prejudice, conflicts of interest, and offensive behavior. We threw a lot in there, Jimmy, but that's because there's a lot going on with these media types.
Well, this is probably, if you think about it, Dan, I think this is year in and year out the biggest sports media story of the year. It's 2 weeks of hype.
Right.
And it is now turned into a show and a reason for the NFL Network to show off their they control.
They
control
right.
it all. They control the whole thing, and it has become more than just your typical media event. It truly is entertainment surrounding the game.
Right. So let's take
Whereas the game
Right.
becomes less important, to be honest with you, unless,
Exactly.
of course, you're really a hardcore
Yeah,
sports
I don't. I watch it for the commercials. So, but we all know that.
But you are in Patriots Nation, so you will be pulling for the local team now, won't you, Dan?
Facebook. Interesting. The only
is
one incident.
Qualify Alex as a protege, Alex Reamer
Alex Reamer.
as a protege.
Well, what was that all about?
Exactly. Alex Reamer was a member of the first workshop that I did for Young Broadcasters of America, which at the beginning was Young Sportscasters of America back in 2008.
Right.
Alex was also part of a Emmy-nominated magazine show that aired on NECN. He did one-on-one interviews with Carl
But
Ravitch.
you knew him. You were there when?
Yes, and I
Okay.
gave him some advice and some guidance through his teen years. But
Unfortunately, he
Alex
did not take
Reamer,
that. He went off, did something else, and made a name for
well,
himself.
no, I think what this is more than anything else, again, is an example of a young person emulating older, more established professionals who have made their living becoming shock jocks. And I
Right.
am talking specifically about Kirk Minahan and Jerry Callahan, the #1 live morning show
In
in
the Boston
Boston on
area.
WEEI. Alex has been a fill-in host and a contributor to that show. and I give him credit for that. He's a graduate of BU. He's 24 years old, but he's been a practicing sportscaster since he was 10 years old.
Okay, so he's on the show, and everybody's talking about one of the episodes of Tom Brady's, it's Time versus Tom or Tom versus Time, whichever one of those.
Right.
And so just for a fraction of a second within one of the segments, you hear Tom Brady talking with his daughter who's off camera, a 5-year-old daughter. They're all, it's freestyling on the radio, and Reamer then describes Tom Brady's daughter or refers to her as an annoying pissant.
Right, which, by the way, I admit, and I wrote about this on CLNS Media, I had never heard that word before.
I don't know.
I got a 410 on my verbal. I know, I did grow up.
You grew up under
a
rock,
I got SAT score of 410, but still made a career in media because I had that lowest.
Have you heard of Flipper?
Lowest.
The dolphin Flipper?
Of course, I watched Flipper.
It just came into my mind. I was just wondering if you knew that.
What did that have to do with anything?
Because you didn't know this term pissant. It was
but I know Flipper.
It was a popular Flipper back in the whatever.
Anyway,
so I figured you'd know Flipper.
I looked it up and Googled it. Thank God for Google. And it's contemptible. It means contemptible.
Right. It's not a 4-letter word.
It is what a 24-year-old would probably comment on because they're not a parent.
Right. So this rubbed you the wrong way. You thought everybody came down on him. He was suspended, and you agreed he shouldn't have said this.
He shouldn't have said that word. He could have said she's acting like an annoying 5-year-old, which would have been fine.
I think, what I wrote in my commentary is that this was like a little match with a little flame on a match or a little candle. All of a sudden, it's a wildfire.
Call in the helicopters. News.
Call it. You know why? Because everybody blew it up into something. And I think Tom Brady, when he saw this thing going down, the way it was going down, that's why he finally came out and said, you know what? I don't think this guy should lose his job, because he didn't think that this was even worth what everybody was making it to be.
Alex Reamer was on a plane to Minneapolis, got suspended during that plane flight, then got back on the flight and came back to Boston. He's been suspended from WEEI, and it's a great lesson for him to learn. He learned it the hard way, and this is another piece of advice that I give young people. Yeah. If you want to be in this business, you're better off starting in small markets, making your mistakes.
Yeah, that's not the takeaway from this.
I know it's not.
No, the takeaway from this is, and this goes back to how I introed this segment, conflicts of interest. We have radio stations that are in bed with teams. Yes. They have arrangements, and they push. Now, it's even conflict of interest and other ethical issues. They push their morning show and other people to be edgy, go beyond that line on a regular basis because that's what gets ratings. Then they're in these relationships with these teams, and all of a sudden there's blowback, and it's like, oh, wait a minute. We need to dump them because we don't want to mess with something that we have with the Patriots. We wouldn't want them to pull Tom Brady off, as he said he was reconsidering. We don't want him to go to our competition. And so this odd relationships, I think, interferes with clear thinking for some broadcasters. And that's where you run into some ethical problems in media, I think.
It makes money for the station.
Yes, it does.
Okay. So we understand that's commercial
media. But it wasn't a big deal, and they wouldn't
Brady
have done anything about it if Brady hadn't said anything. So clearly they didn't think it was wrong.
It took a few days for it. Well, I agree that if he hadn't cut his interview short and actually said, you know what, I'm not familiar with it, he would have just kept doing his interview, and this absolutely
so
would have blown over.
the only reason they were doing it was because they didn't want to mess with their investment.
And doesn't that put more attention on the Brady brand and taking the high road of said private world?
Because you want to say stuff about my dog. Look, it is that if you put in this particular case, this was blown out of proportion. The way that the station handled it was wrong. It exposed some ethical problems, I think, and some other issues that broadcasters face. It exposed, this whole pressure that management usually puts on their hosts in order to get ratings. So I think there were just a lot of things. Whenever I'm talking to young people about ethical issues, you always looking for examples of one that you can unpack, and this was one of those. There was a lot in this bag, and it smells.
Right, and it does. And Alex, when you start your career, Dan, and I don't know if you did this as a 23, 24-year-old. I was on a CBS affiliate in Portland, Maine at age 23, okay? And I'll be honest with you, I was not comfortable with myself on camera at age 23. It took me a few years to get comfortable with my own personality, build my own confidence, because I was really trying to be Bob Lobel on TV.
Who was a big-time anchor here in the Boston market.
I looked up to Bob Lobel. I liked his folksy style, and I imitated it. I mimicked it as to get comfortable doing my job on camera. And it did take me a few years before it was, there's no difference, as we all know, there's not a lot of difference between me behind a microphone now and me in real life, for better or for worse.
Jimmy's Jimmy.
That's right. So again, Alex Reamer looking up to the shock jocks, and the fact that Howard Stern came to the defense of Alex Reamer is fascinating to me.
Well, what was fascinating to me was that I was on the same side as Howard. I'm like, whoa, with Stern, Dan Lothian, agree?
I know.
I don't know. He's out there. He's crazy. But on this one, I have to agree with him.
Yeah, and to me, it's like, you know what? I think it's fascinating that we've gone to this in radio, that the shock jock has become the norm to drive revenue, because it's driving audience, because people are shocked to hear someone on the radio say these things. And of course, it feeds right into the politically correct media correct atmosphere that is out there in our world right now. And everybody is on edge.
Right. Oh, yeah. And you dance on the edge, you get hurt. I did tease up class prejudice, and that's something I'd like to delve into that in another segment in another show, because I think it's something we really should broaden a little bit. But part of what that conversation is about is that you have a lot of reporters who are involved in all aspects, from sports to news, and there are a lot of times where they don't really, because of the backgrounds that they come from, they don't really have a full understanding of the people they're covering. And so they say a lot of things and do a lot of things, but I think this is one I want to spend a little bit more time with. So we'll push that to another time. But I did tease that. I wanted to talk a little bit.
I could do that.
Okay. Well, this is a good discussion, Jimmy.
I knew it would be. Animated. I told you this would be the best segment.
It would. My goodness, you were on fire over there. I thought you were going to jump across and rip out my throat.
No.
Fortunately, you did not.
Okay.
Okay, we're wrapping up the show with the fourth quarter, and this is where we...
what didn't we cover? I know what it is, but what didn't we cover?
Fourth quarter is kind of like when you're sweep. Do you ever sweep your house, or you hire somebody to do that?
Just the other day, I was sweeping.
You were?
Yes.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
And
I didn't know.
I vacuum and dust and
you
do
vacuum
windows.
As well, really?
I clean toilet bowls.
Wow, what, the cleaning lady was
Someone
sick?
has to get
Was
paid. I have to make a living somehow, okay?
But you know how when you're sweeping and you bring all the dust to one corner and then you put it in the dustpan and throw it out? Well, that's what we do in the fourth quarter, except we don't throw it out. We offer it up as brilliant takes from many different things happening around the country and around the world. This time,
and also, sometimes reflecting on our own careers with anecdotes, and I just gave you one, which could have been in the fourth quarter, but whatever.
That's right. But that's right. We stretched it. We could. Would you like to say it again, Jimmy?
No, I would not.
So it can be like third quarter, fourth quarter, bridging the gap between the third and fourth quarter?
Let us move on. Let us. I mean, I could talk about the longest week of my career, which was the '86 Super Bowl.
The week that never ended.
It was 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. every night, 7 days. Live shots all day long. You didn't have time to eat, let alone breathe.
Wow. Were you able to use the bathroom?
What was the worst part about it? Yes, I got to use the bathroom.
You wet your
the
pants.
worst part of it was that the team that you're covering got absolutely shellacked by the 1985-86 Bears in that Super Bowl, which I believe was Super Bowl 20, if I can remember back.
By the way, you mentioned the Bears. Would you like to brag a little bit more, since the theme of today is people who you've mentored and helped and are now making it big time?
You want me to mention Lauren?
Yeah, why not? Go ahead.
Lauren
Throw it in there.
At Lauren, what is she? At Lauren Screeden, hashtag Lauren Screeden. She works for the Chicago Bears. I do consider her a protege, as well as the other Alex who's in the other room, Alex Barth, who's a regular contributor on CLNS Media.
I hear the hammer and the chisel right now, because they're opening the doorway of our studio, so you'll be able to go out. Your head will be so big by the time we're done with the show. Anyway, we were talking about around the world, and the one story that caught my attention from AFP, which was the fact that in Kenya this week, they shut down television. They turned off television.
The country shut down
private
commercial
They hit the switch
stations.
And they turned it off.
Do you wonder if there's a guy in Washington, D.C. who would like to do that to a few channels?
I knew you were going to go there, Jimmy.
Okay, sorry.
No, but it was shocking. And, a lot of times we don't, here domestically, we don't pay a lot of attention to things that are happening overseas. But there are some troubling trends that we're seeing. And a lot of times what happens overseas eventually percolates and makes its way back here. And we end up end up facing the same things. But there are reporters, journalists, and other media types in other countries who are dealing with some really difficult, tough situations, and this is one of them. It's in the midst of a political season over there, campaign season, and this was kind of one way how the people in power decided to shut down some of the private voices by shutting down private television and keeping the government-owned stations on the air. And in this article from AFP, it was troubling because there were some experts talking about how this takes us back to the 80s, which was a much more darker and restrictive age. It goes on to say, is this alarming? Yes. Does it raise the stakes? Absolutely. But it's an escalation of a process that's been underway for a long time. And I think, it's intimidation. It's telling private enterprises out there in the medium that, you know what, we're not going to let you speak up, because when we want to ram things through, when we want to win and continue to hang on to power, we can do that. We just hit the kill switch.
Well, yeah, you can do that, especially if you are in a country that 60% of the voters did not vote in the last election.
Wow.
Okay?
Yeah.
That's not a good thing.
That is not a good thing.
And it kind of plays right into the authoritarian kind of government that is in place there. And there's some issues. Let's face it, there's some pretty big issues over there. And I feel bad for the Kenyans. I don't know. What do you think is going to happen?
I don't know.
They are going to go to the courts on this.
I have no idea if you can. I mean, I think that the problem is that a lot of times in these places, people get used to the oppressive behavior of their leadership. And what do? I mean, you speak up and you can get in a whole lot of trouble. So it's tough. I'll keep following this and see what the outcome of it is. But it is disturbing. And, yeah, we're seeing some cracks even in our own system. And so whenever I see something like this, it's very frightening. Now, Jimmy, I do want to go to something earlier this week. You and I had a fight.
No, we did not.
Okay,
it was a disagreement.
It was a disagreement.
And by the way, I have no idea where you're going.
I know. It's so funny. I saw you jump right in, and I'm like, he doesn't know what I'm going to talk about.
We don't fight.
No, so it was a disagreement.
Okay.
But it was about an issue having to do with the Super Bowl.
Okay.
And I said that I covered the first Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah.
Now you know where I'm going, right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Now, I covered the first Super Bowl post 9/11.
Right. And I said, you're wrong, Dan.
I said it was Tampa Bay, and I couldn't remember the other team, which was Oakland.
Yep.
And you said, I'm wrong.
And I was right.
Yeah, but then, you know what's interesting, though? I almost convinced you, because towards the end of that argument, you started saying, well, Dan, I don't know. You might be right now.
No.
You?
Just because sometimes I get well, in football, it's kind of weird.
What?
Because this is the end. It's February 2018,
right.
And this is the end of the 2017
Yeah, you started doing
season.
some sort of a calendar analysis.
Well, that's what I said. 9/11, 2001.
Yeah, you're going September. Yeah, but Super Bowl always comes on the same time.
No, it doesn't.
Same
it comes
month.
It takes the next year. So we're talking about 9/11, 2001.
Right.
That horrible day that we'll never forget.
Right, but it had to be after the event, right? So
That's
that
right.
was that. Yes. Yeah.
That's right. Oh,
okay.
Someone did not put their.
Well, no, I didn't, because
on?
we had someone call in on my phone line. That's the reason.
Okay, fine. That's all right. I just like to point that out because sometimes.
Of course,
usually it's me.
Of course, nobody would have heard that because I was able to catch it before, but you pointed it out. Now everybody knows that I did it.
So let's go back to
yes, the fight we had.
Correct.
Yes.
There wasn't a fight. It was a disagreement, and the facts proved me right, which was awesome.
Oh, there you go.
Because I remember
this is
what
more about
Robert
how great
Kraft.
You are.
Well, no, it was the first championship for the New England Patriots.
Yes.
First of 5, just for those of you who are counting at home. And I remember what Mr. Kraft's speech was, because it was like, this Super Bowl, we're all Patriots.
Right.
Okay? And it was a great line. I'm sure he worked on it, the entire game.
Or Stacey did.
Or Stacey James did, absolutely.
Who's the PR person.
That's right.
Are you surprised I knew that one?
No, I'm not, because I'm sure you had to get a credential from him at some point in your career.
Did. Yeah, I think so, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So anyway, basically getting to the end here, it was February 2002 when that speech was made, that game ended. So the following season is the one that you covered, and it was an open-air stadium.
Exactly. So I was a little right?
Correct, because the Patriots won in the Superdome on Adam Vinatieri's walk-off 48-yard field goal, if I remember correctly. Mm-hmm. And, the Patriots always play close Super Bowls, and that's kind of what I'm expecting.
All of them, yeah.
Yep, kind of what I'm expecting. Again.
Well, I predict Philly will win.
I know you would do that just to be
Get under your
counter
skin.
to mine.
Well, my wife, by the way, she wore a Philly. She's from the Philadelphia area.
So she has every right to root for the Eagles, although she's nice. Okay?
And I'm not?
Most Philadelphia fans, sports fans, are the worst in sport. They're miserable people. They're mean.
Yeah, my wife is
They
mean.
booed Santa Claus, for crying out loud. You can't do that.
Santa Claus. They booed Santa Claus?
They booed Santa Claus.
I believe in Santa Claus.
And they death threats to Terry Francona when he was managing the Phillies, okay?
Eagles.
So I don't like the Philadelphia sports fan. But I'm also thinking perhaps if they do win, they might mellow out.
They might. Or not. They'll become cockier. I'll find out.
No.
I'll test the pulse of my wife depending on what happens.
I don't need to know that.
Hey, it's been a fun. By the way, did I mention we have a new name?
We do.
Behind the Media. That's what we're called. Used to be called Friday Afternoon Live. No more. We're Behind the Media. As always, Jimmy and Dan Lothian here, having a chat and chewing things up. And
do you want to do it?
No, he left.
Oh, he left?
No, he left.
Oh, I love being the boss. You don't have to hang around for the end of the show.
But, I always have a great time behind the mic with you, Jimmy, and this was really fun. We don't hate each other. We just have a good time. There's a lot of good stuff to talk about in the media, and we're hearing from a lot of folks who are enjoying this. It's a little bit of we're trying to deliver news and information, but also throw in a dash of entertainment because that's what this is all about.
That's what I'm all about. I throw in the levity.
The levity.
This is Behind the Media with Dan Lothian, your host,
and Jimmy Young
on the side.
Thanks so much for being a part of our show. If you enjoyed the show, share it with every single person you meet, even if it's out there on the street corner. Tell them to watch and listen to our show. Also, you can hashtag Behind the Media in order to interact with us on Twitter. Subscribe to our show on iTunes and keep listening on the CLNS Media Network. Goodbye.